Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome to a guest lecture hosted by Al-Mawrid Institute, Canada. This is the second lecture in our series on the tragic conflict in Gaza. The title of today's lecture is The Impact of the Israel-Hamas Conflict on Muslims in the West. Our guest speaker is Shaikh Abdul Rehman Ghauri. Shaikh Ghauri is a Hafiz of the Quran who has completed his alim training from the United Kingdom following the Dars Nizamiya, and subsequently went on to study one-on-one with various scholars in Saudi Arabia. Before beginning our lecture, I'd just like to briefly introduce my co-hosts. So I have with me Dr. Danish Hamid, who has completed his PhD in political philosophy and is working as a translator for the Ghamdi Center of Islamic Learning. And I also have our youth group member, Shah Zubairi, who is studying his GCEs and is very concerned and interested in these types of religious questions and Muslim issues that we'll be discussing today. So with no further ado, Sheikh Ghauri, you can begin your lecture.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Today's lecture, as I'm thankful for you giving me the opportunity for coming on and doing this lecture. I appreciate it, and it is a very sad and it's a very hard time for Muslims around the world. Not just Muslims, non-Muslims also, but undeniably Muslims do feel much more attached to this conflict. Yeah, it is a conflict which divides people. It is a conflict which also unites people. Yeah, so there are a lot of things going on. Now, the title we chose, me and Shonbai, was the impact that the conflict in the Middle East has on the Muslims in the West. So people like us. Now, if you think about it, any conflict which has an impact in the world has some impact on us also. It doesn't have to be a direct impact, but there's always something which leads, because the world is so connected that anything which happens goes around and comes around again. So basically, if something happens in, for example, China, this will lead one day to things which will affect us. Same thing with Ukraine and Russia. So things which will happen there or are happening there right now, especially for me, I'm living in Germany. As you know, that the prices here have gone up a lot. You know why? Because it's connected very much, the sanctions and whatever it is. Now, especially this conflict has a big impact, although it has not, if you think about it, the Russian conflict is nearer to Germany or other countries in Europe than the conflict in the Middle East. But still, the conflict in the Middle East is the bigger conflict. Why? Because taking a side can cost your job, So it has a massive impact. Let's get that straight first, It has a massive impact. It is not something small which is happening right here. Why? Because otherwise people wouldn't lose jobs. Otherwise people wouldn't be afraid of saying what they want to say in this free part of the world, of saying it, and maybe costing them partners, advertisements, depends in which business they are, of course. So yeah, it is very, it has a massive impact. We can agree on that, I think. From now there are a lot of ways to look at these conflicts, you know. One is the political view, and one is the Islamic view, or the moral view, or you can say the religious view, or whatever you want to say, you know, or call that. Now, of course, we have, as Muslims, we do have an Islamic view, we do have a religious view on these kind of things. For us, of course, the region is a holy region, is a very special region. Why? Everyone knows, because we believe a lot of prophets have been there. We believe it started a lot of things before the markaz, the center of spirituality was in today's Saudi Arabia. We believe that, you know, it was this place called Jerusalem. So it has there is a big connection for Jews, Muslims, and Christians in that part of the world. That is undeniably true. We do feel a very, very, somehow, subhanAllah, as you know, some things don't have explanations. They have, you could explain, you can explain some things rationally, but still, when it comes to it, the whole picture can't be explained without there being an X factor. Like, for example, what is the reason why so many people, especially in Ramadan, say that no, in Ramadan, I don't want to do that and this and that? Why do people say that? Now, of course, you could say, yeah, because it's Ramadan, so everyone, acts very pious. But the question is, why in Ramadan? Why not in Dhul Hijjah? When the why is it especially in Ramadan that people do go out and pray more? So then we of course find in the ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ, numerous ahadith, you know, he quotes that the shaitan has been locked down, and you know, the shayateen are much less, and the powers are much less than before. Now the thing is, you could say, yeah, but it's still, you know, that's still not true, whatever. But we do believe that there is some special holy energy which the Ramadan possesses. Of course we do. We are Muslims, so we believe that. Now, that is not explainable in easy terms. It's just something you have to believe. Now, of course, it still depends on yourself, this and that, but still, it is something which you can't explain. There is a little X factor. In the same way, I believe that this Palestine issue has some X factor. Why is it that always this issue unites the whole Ummah? You know, there is something which plays into it, I believe, which unites the whole Ummah. For, like, if you think about it, we're talking about London here. I've lived in London for like 6-7 years. I mean, in London, 350,000 people went on the street. We're talking about that's like 10%, 0.5% of 5% of London. That is massive, you know. That is not small. And thinking about in a Western city, for 350,000 people officially, we don't know the dark number, or we don't know that. So if you think about it, that is really, really big, and that is for a Muslim cause. It is for a human cause, of course. Yeah, that's true. The left also helped a lot in gathering those people, undeniably. That's true. But still, it is for a Muslim cause. And that is one of the biggest demonstrations we have seen in the United Kingdom, in Europe generally, ever. I think the last time 300,000 people were in a major city, when was that? I think it was in the 90s for a scandal or something. There was this Belgian pedophile case of Marc Dutroux, where I think 300,000 people went on the streets there, you know, in Brussels. So it's not very something common which is happening, you know. So I'm just trying to just from the sides and from the lens of Europe, especially because North America, you guys know better probably, but especially from the sides, from a European point of perspective, it is very unique what is happening. People are gathering, people are getting together. and you see how free speech is actually getting cut, So from an Islamic point of view, we believe that any Muslim who is in trouble, any Muslim who is in trouble in the whole world, we do help them. We believe that any non-Muslim who is in trouble, we have obligation to help them, as is a farz kifaya. So we, as long as some do it, not everyone has to do it, but some have to do it, So there is an obligation to do that, of course. But especially because of the background and this and that, there is a kind of a connect which we have, and the least we can do, as the Prophet ﷺ said, if you can't do it with your hand, if you can't do it through speech, at least do it from your heart. Hate it, do dua for them, and that is the least. He said the lowest stage you can have in iman. So that is something which of course unites us in that way, and it should hurt. We can see that it does hurt Muslims around the world, but that is like the Islamic point of view, that we have obligation to do something for our brothers and sisters, as Allah says, "Innamal mu'minuna ikhwa," the believers are brothers. We are family. If one hurts, the other one should be hurting. It's like the Prophet said in a hadith in Bukhari, that the Muslim ummah is like a body. If one part hurts, the other one should be hurting. So if the tooth, if one part hurts, the other one should feel it. So all these kind of so these kind of things are very, very organic to Muslims, that we have to stick together. And in those moments where we stick together, we shouldn't look at differences. We shouldn't look at ikhtilafat, or this guy says that, this guy believes that. As long as we are one, we're strong. Now the second thing is, from a political point of view, this issue is more political than it is Islamic, in one sense. Why? Because there is a lot of geopolitics which is playing here. There's a lot of racism, there's a lot of geopolitics which is in there. I don't think right now this is not the right interview or the right lecture to give a history of the Palestinian issue. But what we do know, of course, is that it is a geopolitical issue. We know that this issue has been going on since 75 years. We know that if you just narrow down the whole issue, this is the first time people try to make, normally, what politicians very, very, very eagerly like to do is use hard words, complicated words for simple issues. Why do they do that? They do that so that the public gets confused. So because the average public does not know this politician slang. So the geopolitical slang is more complicated than it actually is. Sometimes issues are complicated, and then populist movements make it seem very easy. That is also true. That is true. Like, they say about Hitler that he used to give very simple solutions for extremely complicated things. That's why people used to love him. He just used to blame the Jews. But there are sometimes easy issues which get complicated. Why? Because people make it complicated. So if you look at this conflict, every time someone even tries to have some sympathy for the Palestinian people in mainstream, they start by saying it's a complicated issue. Always. They always start by saying it's a complicated issue. The interesting thing is not that complicated, because even the average person understands this conflict. If you just narrow it down to him, like you have one house and there comes a guy and says, hey, listen, 2,000 years ago, I used to live here. I just came. Of course, it's more complicated than just what I'm just saying right now. Of course, it's more complicated than that. But if you take the essence of the conflict, it's very easy. I mean that. I don't know if you guys agree, but for me, I believe the essence of this conflict is easy. You know, now of course there are complications. Of course there is something like, why did the Arabs even sell their land to the Jews in the first place? You know, before and everything. You know, you could argue a few points. Of course, there were mistakes that have been made, but the essence of the conflict is very easy. And if you think about it, the whole issue, people, you have what you can see, especially in the West. Now I'm coming back to the issue of the West. For us people, Muslims in the West, I believe the way we should look at this conflict when we talk to people, when we think about this conflict, you have to try to start the conversation with what is your parameter? What is your principle? What are your principles? By which principle are you going? What is the what kind of meta discussion are we having? What is the way of looking at this conflict? Like when you start to see what the way of, when you start to ask the person what that person thinks of a conflict, before you ask that question, you have to understand where the person is coming from. And I believe that is the easiest way to get the opponent or the other people's intention out. Like I always say, now this might sound very controversial, what I'm about to say, but because mashallah, very educated people are sitting here, you know, I will just lay it out and I think you guys will get me. I said to a person the other day, I said that if you just take the way of conquering, like if you just take the conquering aspect, like the world was functioning before, people go somewhere, they conquer somewhere, they say, okay, this land is ours, the women and children are ours as well. They go to another land, they conquer it, and everyone recognizes that the conqueror owns the conquered land, right? This is how it was. This is how the rules were. And they used to do that. If you look at this logic, then of course, one country has won. Why? Because they are more powerful right now. Israel is more powerful right now. They have more weapons right now. They have they have an army. They don't even have an army. They have nothing and they have everything. So by this logic, of course they win. And then if a person would tell me, but wallahi al-azim, if a person would tell me to my face, listen, those beep, beep, beep Palestinians, they don't have power. They know they should just cry. They should be happy whatever they have. They should be happy that we don't kill them more. And 10,000 children are less. And you know what? They don't have anything. If the Muslims have the guts, why don't they help them? They don't, because we have power and you guys don't. You guys are too scared to attack us because otherwise the United States will come after you. If a guy would talk like this to me, I swear I would respect that. Why? Because then he's right. He's trying to tell me that our Palestinian brothers and sisters don't have a right to live or say anything because they are the weak ones. Then the weak ones just has to shut up. So by that logic, he's right. But the problem in the West is the hypocrisy. No one will ever say that. No one will say, oh, what did you think? You kill a Jewish child? Don't you think if you kill a Jewish 1,200 Jewish children, Jewish civilians, then 30,000 Palestinians have to die? Are you dumb? If someone would tell me that, I would understand his logic, because for him, a Jewish life is worth more than a Palestinian life, 10 times maybe. So from his logic, it's not even enough right now. It still has to be at least 7,000 more be killed. 70,000 have to be killed more and more and more, 100 times maybe. So But no one goes by that logic. The problem right now is everyone acts like we're going by law. That is the whole problem here. If you go into the 21st century and have the lens of the 21st century and start looking into international law, human rights organizations, every person is equal. No black is worth more than a white man. No white man is worth more than a black man. No brown man is worth less than a white man. If you look by this logic, international law, war crimes, then you cannot win this argument. From any point of view, you cannot win the argument. Be it the settlements, be it the war crimes, be it the unprecedented killing in the last 75 years, be it the Nakba. Anything you say, you go. And that is the reason there has been very less discussions of this topic which were academic. If you think about it, look at the internet, you'll find any bullshit, but you will not find an academic discussion, not that much, on this topic. There are not that many. I haven't found many. There are a few with name. I mean, like with people who are very recognized. Of course, people like Norman Finkelstein, try to always challenge people, but not everyone goes onto it, to get why? Because his style of debating is very scholarly. You cannot, when he talks, he doesn't want you to come into a 20-minute format and cut him off. So if you do a debate with someone scholarly, every time you do that, you see how people cannot bullshit around. And when you see that, you see how this is not debatable, not winnable. You see the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, only facts, no creepy, no rhetoric skills, and no laughing matters, and no shutting the other one up, no telling you ran out of time, nothing, just hard facts. And you see the cases of all the countries, and you see the arguments from all the countries, from a country like Norway, which is pro-Israel, and other countries. And you see the vast difference in how the lawyers of Israel and the countries like United Kingdom and United States, which were in favor of against the petition of South Africa, they were crumbling. The best legal experts were crumbling. Why? Because it's not winnable. It's very, very hard to actually, and if you look at all the discussions which have happened, one thing is in common. Every time they talk, they say, forget international law. Who cares about international law? No one cares about international law. They always try to get away from the law. Why? Because as soon as you go into rules, you die. And they always use the United States didn't care about Hiroshima was the law. This was not a law, So they always try to get out of the laws. So coming to the last point, the impact on the Muslims has been in the West has been massive. Muslims have been made to they have been pushed to make a choice. If you are even pro-Palestine, not anti-Jewish, if you're just pro-Palestine, you are anti-Semitic. If you are saying, listen, October the 7th happened, and I find it horrible, but what happened before that, you're anti-Semitic. As soon as you said, but, it's gone. You're anti-Semitic here. As soon as you try to say, but after that, the selective outrage it is so interesting that you see those people who will not in the West, who have a culture of not hurting a fly, who call us like people in the third world barbaric, and say they don't have respect for human life, and they are barbaric. They have loud language. They look aggressive. They have a loud culture. They won't even hurt their dog, a dog, not even their dog, but a dog. If you hurt a dog in the West, on the street in Berlin, in Amsterdam, you will be a demon. There was a guy who uploaded a video of a turtle which he was playing football. He was a multimillionaire, a German, and he kicked, and everyone knows that guy. He's having, I think he has like uh 10 strip clubs or something. He's a multimillionaire. Everyone knows what he does, but no one cares, of course, because it's legal. So he has a video of his mansion where he kicks a football against a turtle, against the shield of the turtle. And he laughs in the video. I think he's been ordered to pay 400,000 euros because I think 400,000 euros because he did something really bad to that turtle. So what I'm trying to say is, this is a country, the West, Europe is a continent where people can't even see, which is good, that an animal gets hurt. They cannot see that. Because people, this case, how did it get big? He posted it on social media, people were outraged. And then you see so many kids dying and dying and dying, slaughtered. There is a leg missing, there is a head missing, there are dead bodies of babies all around. And then you'll be like, the same people will be like, no, but it's Hamas. It's this, they're using human shields. So it's like, the selective outrage, it's unbelievable. It's unprecedented. What is happening right now in the West is the same people we know, which are so good morally, have an excuse why these brown people are dying. So for us, this should be a lesson to come to the end now. How much time do you have?
Yeah, maybe a few more minutes if you want to wrap up.
Okay. Sean by tongue again.
We need to take more. So feel welcome.
So it is. So for us, this is a very critical time. It is about identifying as what we are. This is what I believe. About identifying as Muslims and to understand, yes, we are different. That does not mean that we have to critique everything and get out of the countries we live in or we're born in. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it is critical because at the end of the day, we are Muslims and we are different. Be it because the narrative which has been being, they are pushing a narrative which is anti-Palestine, which is anti-Muslim. And this is something we have to understand. And don't ever, this is my advice for everyone, don't ever get pushed where they are pushing you to, because they are pushing you into this corner where you are not allowed to say anything. Like, for example, they say, if we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They're trying to say that this is a slogan which is for supporting Hamas, and it is a slogan which means the eradication of Israel, which is absolutely bullshit. That's not true. But they are saying this is a slogan which promotes that. So what is the option? They want you to stop saying it, but you will say, no, I will say it because you don't get to decide my definition of things. The same way, if a person says, what the Palestinians are doing is jihad, fi sabilillah, it is by any definition. How can we even act like this is a bad word? This is a word. We have to, these moments are moments where we have to trust Allah, where we have to trust. This is our faith. We believe that God is on our side. We believe that we are not doing anything bad. We're the only religion in the world. Islam is the only religion in the world which says that even animals should not be hurt in jihad. Animals should not be hurt. Children should not be hurt. Women should not be hurt. Non-combatants, men who are da'if, laysa ala du'afa, should not be hurt. So not even trees, not even churches should be hurt. So, or damaged. So we can't, no one tells us how to respect. They say war is chaotic, and in war, these things happen. We say we have rules even for war. Before there was international law, before there were war crimes, there was a man who told us what war crimes were. The sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, so we should not be, we shouldn't be ashamed that if we say the Palestinians are doing jihad, stop explaining to someone, stop letting someone explain to you what your jihad is. Because we know we're not terrorists. We know that we're not anti-Semitic. We know that the Prophet ﷺ was not an anti-Semitic person. So framing everything anti-Israel as anti, I saw a debate yesterday, and I'll conclude, where the rabbi, imagine there was a rabbi who was saying, if you call another rabbi, even he's an unholy rabbi, you are anti-Semitic. Now imagine this, how close, mashallah, the Jewish community is here. That they are saying, a Zionist is saying, that if another person which does anything to you, doesn't matter what he says, as soon as you say the word unholy to a rabbi, you are anti-Semitic. What the hell? Like, this is where it has come to. You cannot even criticize otherwise everything comes crumbling down. And then we have us Muslims, we don't even pray behind each other. We call each other kafir. We don't even, they say, there's this quote where he says, Sunni कहते हैं शिया काफिर, शिया कहते हैं सुन्नी काफिर, सलफीस कहते हैं सूफी काफिर, सूफी कहता है सलफी काफिर, बरेलवी कहता है देवबंदी काफिर, देवबंदी कहता है बरेलवी काफिर, जन्नत में कौन जाएगा? मेरा बाप. So it's like, this is like, it's crazy. We have so much between each other that we fight so much against each other that we don't see what power we have. 2 billion Muslims. And this is the first time, and I'm really concluding now, Sean Bhai, this is the first time in history where we can actually see, and where I was really not that positive around social media. And I was like, there is no point. The social media, what can social media do? It can't do anything, but when this conflict happened, this is the first time where our quantity helped us. Why? Because one guy wrote a fake post, 10,000 Muslims commented, So we can see we don't even need help from outside. Of course, people will come, lekin wo khud se aayenge. The way the Prophet ﷺ did it. He just displayed the truth. Everything else fell in place. So we just have to support the cause, and everything else will come, So I think we should open it up now.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. I think I'll ask Danish Bhai to go first if he'd like to, with any comments or any questions that he has.
Jazakallah khair, Shaikh Ghauri Saab. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, because you mentioned Germany and the experience of Muslims in Germany, has there been any progress since the first couple of months? Because there was a lot of, the German government was basically standing behind Israel because of its historical guilt. And Muslim voices and even Arab voices and basically even secular and German voices who were pro-Palestinian were throttled. So have you seen any progress since then, or is it still the same story?
No, yeah, because there was this French word which the German Vice Chancellor said. He said the security of Israel is our Staatsräson. That means it is so crazy because that actually means it is our It is one of the duties of this state inherent of these people. Like, this is like, you won't even say that to your wife. Like, why would you say that? This is like in 2001 when the German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder at that time said about, and after 9/11, he said, we have a unapologetic and unconditional loyalty to the United States of America. Like, why would you, how can you have an unconditional loyalty? Like, there has to be you can say we're friends, we have a loyal base, we have a historic background. You can say all these things, fine, it's still wrong, but you can still say that. But why would you say sentences like unconditional loyalty? Like, they can do whatever they want, and this is how Germany is behaving. Anything the United States does, they don't care, but they just, they just do it. So when he said that about Israel, this is how Germans this is how what they feel, because they feel because of historic guilt that they have to see that because the Palestinians are paying the price of what they did, So at the end of the day, wouldn't it be about the Germans? Things would have been very different. But the public opinion is changing, but it's still not as good as in England. England is still better. I would say England is very good. The narrative is changing, but still a lot of people here, they just believe that, Hamas is a terrorist, of course, they believe, and any Palestinian which are dying, they're just dying because they're human shields. The really dumb things that they're like, this is how it is, So it's like the double standard. Like, over here, you can't even hurt a fly, and if you hurt a turtle, you get jailed. But yeah, children are dying. So the narrative in Germany is very, very very much more than above.
I'd like to ask you a follow-up on that, if you if you allow me. So I'm trying to understand, even at the level of the masses, it's not like Germany doesn't have a free media or a free press. So and it's not that they don't see the pictures. So because you're from that particular context, that's why I'm asking specifically about Germany. I want to get a good sense of this. How can people still continue with that same tired trope when they actually see it every day on their screens? Is it something to do with the psychology of the people, or is it, does mass guilt for the Holocaust explain everything, or is it something to do with the German education system, where it's imbibed from very early on that they were responsible for the Holocaust? Something like that has been written about in the literature as well.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
There are a lot of things. Like, psychologically, German people are not like American people. Americans are much more open to new ideas. Americans, North America, Canadians also, they have more risk taking, They do explore new things. They travel around. They like to travel around. Germans are generally people who don't take much risks. They're very conservative. They don't like new things. They don't like new food. They are very conservative. Germany is one of the countries which has still the most cash. Why? Because they're not friendly with electronics still. It's very interesting, these a lot of crime happens here with old people. Why? Because they still have a lot of cash. Like, a lot of people here still have a lot of cash. They don't have a lot of bars here, a lot of restaurants here. Still don't, like, it's getting less and less. But even I was in a cinema the other day, and I couldn't pay with MasterCard. I could only pay with a normal Maestro card or cash. And I was like, this is a cinema, for God's sake. Like, it's very behind in a lot of electronics. Although it's, of course, everywhere else you can pay by now with cards and stuff, but it was slower than in other places, much slower. Like, I remember in England, it was much faster. So the technology is very fast, but they don't like to use it as fast, Like, wherever you'll see China, you'll see everywhere there has been a Bitcoin stand, and you can pay by Bitcoin. Germany, you'll find maybe one or two when the hype was there, maybe in Berlin there was one shop you could pay with Bitcoin. So Germans are very conservative, and that is one thing. They still watch TV. Some of them, like there is a big chunk of Germans which still watch TV. So in the TV media, of course, the mainstream media, there's absolutely no chance. As soon as you critique Israel, you're gone. Like in talk shows, there was one Muslim woman which could talk from the Palestinian side, and this is all possible because of the narratives of social media. Because people are bombing these people with messages, so they can't be so hypocritical. So they do invite like 3 others and 1 pro. So they invite them, and then they literally in the beginning they're like, okay, can we agree on Hamas are terrorists? Do you condemn Hamas? So in the first 15 minutes, the guy just gets gunned down for condemning everything. Okay, so terrorism is bad. This is bad. Do you accept the human shields, the tunnels, the this, the that? So October the 7th. So they do that all the time. So by the time the guy actually starts talking about Palestine, it's like, yeah, but as you can see, Hamas wants these people to die. If Hamas would say tomorrow, no, we're giving them back, everything would stop. So Hamas is very bad, and you shouldn't support Hamas. So they don't even get the chance. It's designed in a way that the people can't even speak up that much who get invited. So I would believe it is psychological, and even if you think about it, in the American Congress and this and that, there have been voices which are for a ceasefire and which are talking about Israel. But even like the left party in Germany, which is against all the wars, Iraq, they opposed it. 9/11, after 9/11, the Afghanistan war, they opposed it, the left party. Syria, they opposed it. So people who actually were quite good for the Muslims, I mean, nothing happened, but they still raised their voice of being anti-war. Even those people, if you listen to them now, as all of a sudden, they're like, Israel has a right to defend themselves. Like the left of the leftist, he'll be like, no. Like in this issue, somehow there is absolutely unanimously, there is so German, the climate is very, because of the history, as soon as something smells of anti-Semitism, doesn't even have to be anti-Israel is enough. That's why everyone is making the case that the new anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. Everyone's trying to push this narrative right now, so that we get shut up. So no one can even dare to criticize. And they say every Jew who criticizes Israel is a self-hating Jew. For God's sake, but they do that. So yeah, I think Ireland has been very good, mashallah.
Yeah, I recently heard that the Prime Minister of Ireland announced that he's going to be resigning his position. That's after he gave actually said some quite frank remarks in front of Joe Biden about how sympathetic they are towards the Palestinians, but never understand what's going on. But Shah, I think it's your turn if you want to engage the scholar.
Yes, of course, Shaikh Ghauri.
Yeah.
I'll start off with a very simplistic question that I think we've heard a lot. Do you condemn Hamas?
Like I always say to this question, I always say, if you say the IDF is a terrorist organization, then I'll be happy to condemn Hamas. Very simple. The definition has to be same. I always push it back. Say, okay, let's have the same definition. As long as we have the same definition, I don't care. Mere ko chache lagte hain Hamas. I don't care. Like, but you always, I saw that you get them if you try to have the same standard, but they never. You cannot win this argument. Never. They will never be able to defend apartheid. They will never be able to defend. They always try to ridicule it. They say, "Oh, it's the only democracy there. why would you call it an apartheid state? But it is. Let's talk facts. But no one wants to talk about scholarly points because it's just, but sorry, I cut you off. मैंने कुछ serious ले लिया सवाल.
Building on what you said about it being the only democracy in the Middle East, you have adjoining countries. I won't mention them because it's reasons, but they've had a very light stance towards Zionism and Israeli expansion, and specifically the recent conflict. So what would you say to that?
To the Middle East?
Yes.
The thing about the Middle East is they are in two positions. They know that the public opinion, the reason they are acting like half-half is because on one hand, they have the Abraham Accords, which normalizes the relations between the Middle East and Israel. But on the other hand, they have the population. And if you look at, like, as I said, I've been looking at geopolitics since 2012. So I've always been, since 12 years, been in this whole, game and looking at it and looking at conflicts and history. If you look at the Middle East, you notice one pattern. They're not like Pakistan or India or Bangladesh or Indonesia. They're very different. The Middle East, small countries, rich countries because of oil now, all rich, all very small population. All of them don't give their passport easily to migrants, even if they live 40 years there. They don't give their passport, never. Just a few exceptions that I know, but that's it. Otherwise, they don't. And they keep their own citizens, national citizens, happy with a lot of bonuses, perks, no electricity bills, no gas bills, monthly money. Kids get money when they go abroad. They pay for their tickets. They do every single thing for them, and they keep them happy. Why? Because they want them. They don't want another Gaddafi coming, a Hosni Mubarak coming. That the Arab Spring in 2011, that the population came and threw out the dictators, of course, with Western help, but still the people were fed up of some of those people. So they don't want that in their countries. They don't want demonstrations. They don't want ihtijaj. They don't want dharna. They don't want all these long marches. They don't want that. So the reason, coming to your question, they are half into Palestine is because they want to keep the population happy. Like, for example, the Sheikh of the United Arab Emirates, he posted the condemnation. He said, very sad about 7th October, about the attacks. But Al Jazeera, which is the main channel there, he allowed them to be completely pro-Palestine. Now, is that not? Okay, it's free speech, but everyone knows in Mulko mein nothing will happen. Otherwise, if the king doesn't want it, it will not happen. So the king is pro-Palestine, or maybe he's not, but he's acting to be pro-Palestine. Why? Because he knows if Al Jazeera would start being pro-Israel, the narrative in the whole country would keep, and people would come out. Because Muslims have this touchy subject, and this is Palestine. As I said, it's an X factor I can't explain, but somehow Muslims in Saudi Arabia and everywhere you go around the world, everyone I see, they say, Allahumma mahfaz Palestine, wa min dhurriyyatil Palestine. So they do that everywhere, from any country you see, Bosnia, Albania, United Arab Emirates, Saudi, Somalia, everyone. We have so many countries, and Germany is very multicultural, Muslims. So because of that, the kings of the Middle East, they never would publicly tell their people or try to push them into pro-Israel direction. But on the other hand, politically, they have to be diplomats. They can only speak. Like, for example, the president of Turkey is a very good example for it. He called his ambassador back, but he cannot stop his relations with Israel because he needs them and they need him. It's there is a relationship which is going on for the countries, and this is how politics works. This is how geopolitics works. You cannot. This is the reason that, but publicly, he says Israel is has been doing war crimes, and it is a terrorist state. He says that, but as I said, it's I think the only one who literally is doing what they're saying is Iran. I think, like every other country is like has this two-faced policy, but they have to, as I said, because they don't want to stop ties with the West, because they know anti-Israel means anti-West, and everyone needs the West.
Speaking of Iran, you mentioned Iran. What do you think about their whole narrative on the situation? And do you really think they'll do something?
I don't think they'll do something in the sense of it's tricky. It's tricky. You never know. But if you would tell me one country which would dare to do something, it would be Iran. I would say that. But I would generally say that they, of course, their narrative, as I said, people get caught up on Shia Sunni, but in these conflicts, you just shouldn't care about Shia Sunni, man. Like, there is no point. Of course, they are very conservative, extreme, leadership there. That is true. But that is the Islamic point of view. Ab hum baat kar rahe hain ki, is that right? Is that not right? Is it the way this is the way it's supposed to be? But on a political front, they have been a strong voice for Palestine. You have to say that. You have to admit that. Same as Hezbollah, and although they are not a thing, but yeah.
Okay, great. That's all from me. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll ask a couple of things.
Yeah.
I think on this topic we are focusing on the impact of this conflict on people in the West, Muslims in the West. But I think one of the reasons why I find thinking about the West important as Muslim minorities in the West, not only in addition to the fact that I'm living here, but also it seems to me that there's not much that the Muslim populace can do in Muslim countries in terms of trying to nudge the government in a particular direction, or to try and create political pressure, or elect people, or bring people in the media in terms of the influence of social media, especially in those countries. Whereas because of all the repression, whether it's the Arab states that don't have any democracy, or dysfunctional democracies like Pakistan, for example, there's not that much that the public can do, and obviously the leaders themselves are not taking much initiative. So that's why, I mean, for me, I think that if good people in certain Western countries can be swayed, that's something that it would be a useful thing for Muslims in the West to focus on. Can you shed some light on maybe thinking about a strategy for this?
A strategy on which point now?
For Muslim minorities to be active in Western countries. First of all, I mean, like, would you acknowledge that this problem exists in the Muslim world? Do you agree with that premise that the regular Muslim population really can't do much to pressure the governments to actually take any kind of action on Palestine, right? Palestine.
It depends on the population. That is the first thing. Like in Germany, there are 5 million Muslims.
Sorry, just to be clear, I'm talking about like in Muslim countries, right? Do you see any Muslim country where like the population could actually influence the government? I don't see anything actually.
Always remember one thing. People shouldn't be afraid of their government. The government should be afraid of their people. That is very important. But in today's day and age, people forget that. Never, they say never underestimate the power of a common man, because the common man has power, but there has to be a collective outrage about something. And it sounds very primitive and very like, dehati, but as the more people you are, the more pressure you begin with. So if 5 million Muslims would go on the street in Pakistan, of course they can do something. Of course they can. Like 5 million people, like what we're talking about, of course they can do that. But of course, people are so, in some Muslim countries, are so like, they have to work, they have to eat, they have to feed there are some countries like 50% of the population is in the poverty line. So like, what are we talking about here? So in Muslim countries, it has to be the rich Muslim countries. Yeah. But otherwise, you can't expect the population to go out, because they will not. But yeah, a population can do a lot. Of course they can. It's just about the number. I completely, honestly believe it's about the number. Like, how did Iran get, it was 1 million people. You can say what you want about the Iranian Revolution, lekin uske baad kya hua, what happened after that, and what extremism came. But the revolution per se, 1 million people went, stood there, and the army said, okay, we can't do anything now. 1 million people. They said, okay, now hands up, because we can't, how many of our own people are we going to kill? So they put the weapons down. If these people would have been 100,000, the scenario would have been different. But because a million people came out, they were like, okay, this is it. So the Shah fled, and, this is how it was. So I do believe that the size of the people matters, matters a lot.
Okay. So mass movements, you think that they could possibly work, but
that is and the narrative, to change the narrative. But this is how the narrative can be changed. Yeah.
But I mean, so yeah, I guess there could be some sort of options if you can build the numbers. But in the West, I'm a bit more optimistic about working with
Yeah.
these different factions within the left, and even some in the right. In the US, I've seen. In the US, it might be a little bit different from Germany, where there are a lot of people who are resenting the fact that there are big lobby groups that try to push American policy in a direction that they don't see in their national interest, intervening in the Middle East and stuff like that. So I've seen, especially in the online community, a lot of push to to balance things in the Middle East. And it's as time is going by, and there's more and more atrocities that have been uncovered, more and more deception, from Israel. I think things are, working towards our favor. So how do you think that? I think maybe if you think beyond the context of Germany, and maybe in the context of North America, especially in the US, where there's so much more freedom of speech than there is in Germany, is how do you think that is the best way for Muslim groups here in the minorities to work with the political parties,
I think social
and others?
media is one of the best ways to reach people. As long as you reach people and you impact the mindset of people, that is the most important thing. Because people will, when they go forward, they have the power. And I think if you impact people's minds, in America, I think the narrative is shifting quite a lot. I think this is how it comes across.
Sure. And I guess one last point I will ask is because of, you did start off talking about how the Palestinian issue unifies people. But again, I think something that you touched to about, with respect to, Iran being the major country that, is standing with forces that are trying to resist Israel. Iran obviously is the big enemy of the West, at least not necessarily the public, but at least the policy elite tried to paint Iran this way. But in terms of Iran's relationship with the other Muslim countries. I think I find a lot of hostility still, like even in this particular situation in certain corners, especially from, some Arab Sunni, maybe fundamentalist corners that are trying to mix, the fact that they have certain issues with their Aqidah from their point of view, with the fact that they're actually the bigger problem. They're a bigger problem than Israel, for the Muslim world. And so how do you think that this should be dealt with within the Ummah?
This is, of course, the ulama, the scholars, they have to, that's their job. They have to make sure that people in Friday khutbah, especially because everyone prays Jummah at least once in a week, people get together. There has to be a very hard narrative which tells people, we shouldn't look at these differences, and in these kind of things, there is no Shia Sunni. That is a doctrine which has to be pushed from the inside, I believe.
Because what I've observed a lot amongst secular Iranians or secular Pakistanis or secular Arabs is that all of them have a deep hatred of the Palestinian issue and genuinely believe that Israel is right. So you have some very odd activists in Pakistan who advocate for the establishment of Israel as a completely legal state and that Pakistan should recognize it. So it's just kind of odd how you're saying Kemalists in Turkey still have some, Kemalists in Germany, sorry, have some.
Yeah, I didn't. Of course, there are some which don't, but not like all of them. I could not say that all the Kemalists are like anti-Palestine. I could not say that. No, but there are some, like, they are all anti-Muslim. That's true, but they're not all of them anti. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah,
No.
that diversity is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, there's two actually famous people in the public sphere who are Turkish background and both ex-Muslim. One is Cenk Uygur, who is founder of the Young Turks, media organization online, and he's very, very pro-Palestine. So he will make some, he's an ex-Muslim. He'll make some snide remarks about, religious fundamentalism, whatever. But he has a humanist perspective where, he's very strong with respect to Muslim civil rights, and Palestine is a major issue for him. He's been on a lot of debates and other things. Another person is this person Rizwan, the apostate prophet guy. He's also Turkish, ex-Muslim, but he's very, deeply, motivated by his hate for anything Islamic. And he's pretty much been recruited by Zionist propaganda at this point. Him and David Wood had a trip to Israel, and since they've come back, they've been like full on board sort of with the propaganda and the propaganda that they use. A lot of the propaganda that's used is this propaganda about Islamic extremism, and they will bring up the hadith, and they will bring up the women's rights and how gays are going to be treated, and how Hamas does all this stuff. So it's not just the specific aspects of the conflict and hatred of Jews, but this whole, a lot of this entire movement since 9/11 has been just motivated by the fact that Islam is a regressive, uh, threatening, medieval sort of force and religion that needs to be stopped. And that's why a lot of the reporting from the Palestinian perspective is just dismissed, because you can't trust these people, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big issue, isn't it, Sheikh? Because like this is part of the underlying substrate of the narrative. It needs to be combated.
The narrative is set. Anything you say, as I said, we live in a time where if you criticize a rabbi, it means, why would you say unholy to a rabbi? That's anti-Semitic. Like, when I heard that, I was like, this is not, like, this is so ridiculous. Like, there is no religion in the world who would dare to do that. Like, no one would have. Why would I say that if you criticize a scholar and call him fake imam, then you are anti-Islamophobe? What the, like? Yeah, and they say if you're Islamophobe, it's different. If you don't like Hindus, you're different. but if you're anti-Semitic, it's a different kind of hate. Like what? Why would you say that? Like
Yeah, no, I think that these narratives need to be challenged, right? I think that Muslims need to be more, they need to be balanced, but they need to know how to stand up for themselves for when they're not
Yes,
being treated fairly.
always like, why would you? Oh, Piers Morgan said, oh, there were so many Muslims chanting jihad in the middle of
Yep.
London. So what?
The
Like,
was it
why?
Abdul Wahid, Dr. Abdul Wahid with
He's like,
Hizb
why?
ut-Tahrir?
You have to ask them, do you even, and you don't have to do the no, jihad means, oh no, we're talking about our inner selves, and no, say we're talking about war, but it's the war of self-defense for the Palestinians and their right to self-defense right now because they are getting slaughtered. That's how you can just say that, but they're like, no,
Yeah.
we have to. And Muslims I understand it's an interview, and then all those lights in your face, and you're getting on the spot, and then you live and all that. So it's very hard for people to actually do that, and I understand that. So I do understand the point of people wanting to not sound radical. I do get that. But the thing is, the more you get pushed, the more you actually, they're gonna push you. That's how it is.
No, I feel slightly differently about this. I think it should be called out as a red herring anytime somebody brings up that sort of a question that, there was a march and so many people were chanting jihad. And this should be called out for destructive tactics, because in a march which, there are 400,000 people and 10 people chant something, whatever that might be, is irrelevant. You have to see what the larger character of the march is, and it's essentially calling for ceasefire. So it doesn't matter what 10-15 people want. I don't even know what jihad would mean in the case of in the current world order, especially with the way the geopolitics has been over the last post World War. I don't even know what jihad would mean. Would it mean war against Israel, and especially a nuclear power like that, and which has a right-wing government which is so unhinged, it's not going to restrain itself from attacking any country which has such a threatening stance towards it. So I think the essential question about which people have the most influence in this current stage of the conflict, if you want to call it that, or genocide or impending genocide against Palestinians. And it's clear that it's the people of the United States and the United States government who have the most power and ability to do anything material on the ground.
Of course, if the United States wants, tomorrow the war will be over.
Yeah, and which is why American Muslims and even other people who are not non-Muslims, but they just have a very strong view on human rights and civil rights, or self-determination, or any of those other good things which the West proudly proclaims for itself. Those people have the power, in fact, to push. At least in theory, they have the power to push the government in the right direction. It just seems that there is a leadership in the United States which is just unwilling to listen to the voices on the ground, and that is the real sad situation that we Muslims, especially, and the people who are pro-Palestinian, find themselves in, that their voices are not being heard, and they're being gaslit at every instance.
So on this note, considering the US election is this year, do we think that the Palestinian and Israel issue will play like some role in who gets elected or what agenda is set forward?
Oh, of course. Like Biden will lose. He would have lost anyway, I think, but he will lose now, especially now, because he did what he did, because he has a very normal stance for the Palestinians. But the problem is, Trump has not said anything against it. So it's like he might be even worse at this issue.
I mean, knowing Trump, he definitely will be.
Yeah, I think he'll be even. But the Muslims will not vote for Biden only because of that already.
I mean, we also have to notice or sort of be sensitive to how much of a difference the Muslim vote is going to be. There
Not
are
much.
7 to 8 million Muslims in the United States,
It's
and they
not
mostly
just
vote
the
Democratic.
Muslim vote.
And the Arab vote, especially in Michigan, showed that Biden still managed to run away with the primaries. And it's the most
Muslim Arab state in
populous
the union.
Arab state, right? And or the population of the Arabs is the most in Michigan. So he still managed to win. So it's a complicated question. We also have to see how many people who are otherwise uh, Democratic Party voters who are also pro-Palestinian who will refuse to vote for Biden. So that is also something that needs to be looked at. But then lesser evilism kicks in, and then people eventually end up voting because they don't want Trump to be in power. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an issue with the way that we always think from election cycle to election cycle and our short-term thinking with respect to this. We've been doing this since who knows how long, and because of this, what ends up happening is that, we always voting for the lesser evil makes it, the case that the lesser evil keeps getting worse and worse, and we're never able to actually make any kind of impact. Whereas I think that the strategy to punish Biden effectively politically, and people like Trudeau here in Canada, in the short term it might lead to a worse government, but it'll lead to more public opposition on the other side, and a possibility to reformulate and reconstruct a new leadership of the left, which maybe after a few election cycles might change things. I personally don't see. So, do you guys, Sheikh, do you see this as a short-term game or a long-term game? Because I don't think even after the war in Gaza is done that things will immediately get fixed. I think it's a long-term game.
For the people in the West, for the Americans, or what do you
No,
mean?
the entire thing about what's going on in Middle East, for that to change, I think we all acknowledge that American politics needs to change for the Middle East to change, and for American politics to change, it's not gonna happen in one election cycle. Maybe but the new generation though in the US, they're very their minds have changed a lot, and the Zionists are going crazy with this, and they're starting to ban TikTok and do talking about banning TikTok and doing all this stuff because they're very worried about what's happening with the new generation. So 20 years from now, things could change quite a bit.
That's true. It could change quite a bit. That's true. But again, how many Palestinians do you have to die for that? So
Yeah, I mean, the thing though is that can we change that? I mean, if we can't change what happens today, at least try to change what happens as soon as it can change.
As we are Muslims, so we live with hope, we die with hope. Or Allah, we can only do dua. May Allah, hopelessness is a bid'ah, as I always say. So we don't live for this world. We live for the next world. So we believe our brothers and sisters. Hadith mein aata hai that the Prophet ﷺ said, before the blood of a shaheed goes onto floor, God has already elevated him. So we believe they are shuhada, we believe they are martyrs, we believe they are in Jannah, they will be in Jannah also. We don't believe بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. We are not even allowed to say that they are dead, they are alive with God. So hopelessness is a bid'ah. We don't live for this world, we live for the next world. So for them, death is just the beginning of a new life, for the life in eternity, not in an open-air prison. And we can only pray for us and them. But realistically, there is no optimistic view of this conflict for them. Yeah, that's all. I cannot say something which is it's not realistic, to say anything optimistic about the conflict.
Sure. So I think we'll probably wrap up in a little bit, but I think there's one last thing that I think that it wouldn't be proper of us if we don't just you know address this before we close. And because the whole topic of jihad and the context of Palestine has come up, and there's always going to be people who are going to misread what you're going to what you mean by this, or you're talking about jihad, or you're talking about Hamas, and that's it's all legitimate or whatever. I think I just want, if you, Sheikh, can give us what you believe are the rules of war, and what a legitimate you know jihad is, that a country could engage in right now. For example, what would be the defining characteristics of that? And so just we can just get some clarity on this. You alluded to this a little bit more, but maybe you can just talk about this briefly, and then after that we can hopefully close, inshallah.
The thing is, if you think about it, it is, the rules of war, or when jihad is legitimate, it's very easy. It's like every time that you feel your life, or the life of your family or your neighbors or any innocent person is in danger, you have the right to defend yourself. In war, that is like small jihad, like on a daily basis. Someone comes, wants to rob you, you are allowed to defend yourself. Someone comes, attacks your family, you're allowed to defend yourself. Someone comes, says something to you, tries to, invade your country, you're allowed to defend yourself. So defending yourself is, in today's context, attacking armed resistance is also a form of jihad. That is true. But killing civilians in the process is not jihad. That's not jihad. Because the Prophet ﷺ didn't kill civilians, so that's why we don't believe that.
Yeah, so I think it's just important that that point of moral clarity is made very that statement is made very clearly up front, because it's always something that people want to twist and bring out the worst meanings and then accuse other people of. But again, I think there's so many topics that we have just scratched the surface of, and that deserve their own in-depth discussions. But I think we'll have to leave that for another time. But well, thank you very much, Sheikh, for this discussion. And hopefully people will find it beneficial.
Shukran. And Dr. Danish, I hope I see you soon in Istanbul.
Inshallah. Nice.
Take care of yourself. And Ayan also. And you guys probably, Sean, you're still fasting probably, right?
I am, yeah.
आपको तो भूख लगी होगी.
ठीक है, चल रहा है, मजा आ रहा है.
वेट लूज चल रहा है शक्ल से.
हैं?
वेट लूज हुआ है माशाल्लाह, शक्ल से पता चलता है. अच्छा,
I'm hoping. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Take care. Okay, guys. Salam.